Well, hello everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I'd like to welcome you to our the Sira International channel. As always, we like to do video series on very important topics that can help our ministries among Muslims, and also hopefully help our Muslim friends open their eyes to some of the facts about their own teachings that they are totally unaware of. And if you recall, about a year ago, myself and Dr. Jay Smith did a number of video series. One of those was on the Quran, and we called it The Quran's Many Problems. And I am so excited to tell you that my dear brother, Dr. Jay Smith, is with me here in studio. Jay, welcome.
Well, it's good to be back again, Al, after a whole year away. This is going to be fun, these next 2-3 days.
Amen. Amen. So let us explain to people the nature of this particular video series. Today, we are going actually to showcase a book that dealt with a number of corrections in the Quran. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Let me give you a quick historical what happened back in 2014. So we're in 2019. 5 years ago, I introduced a doctoral thesis by Dr. Dan Brubaker in a debate I did with Shabir Ali in Toronto in September of 2014. And at that time, I mentioned that Dr. Brubaker had discovered about 800, a little over 800 manuscript variants. These are consonantal variants, and I didn't show them. I wasn't permitted to do so. I just held them up, and you could see them from a distance. Now, that was 5 years ago that we introduced that.
Correct.
Since that time, many Muslims have tried to respond to that, and they've tried to confront that. That video itself has gone viral. Just on one site, over 500,000 people have watched that video.
And give us a taste of some of the responses from Muslims on that.
Well, the biggest response that's come back is that Jay doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's why I now have you here. It's great to have you on board, because I'm not an Arabist. It's
an honor, brother, to serve with you.
Listen, Al-Fadi, you're an Arabist. This is your mother tongue, is it not?
That is correct. That is correct.
You're from Saudi Arabia, am I correct?
That's where I was born and raised. I'm a former Muslim from Saudi. I speak Arabic. I studied the Quran. I even went to an Islamic university for a while.
Though you speak beautiful English and you have even an American accent, your mother tongue is Arabic.
That is correct.
And you also speak the Qurayshi Arabic, which is the dialect that we're looking for.
Well, I mean, I read the Quranic, basically Arabic, which is known as to be the Qurayshi in general, basically.
You can't really get better than you when we're on the topic that we're going to be discussing today.
Well, it's an honor to serve.
It is an honor, and this is why it's so good that the two of us can be work together in tandem. But what we want to do today, and this is what has been the biggest criticism concerning Dan's material, concerning his not only his doctoral thesis, but this belief that there were changes or corrections or variants to the canonical text.
That's right. And by the way, I mean, I myself was also so pleased to see some of his work, because this is much needed work. Because no one ever ventured into the idea that there could be some changes and corrections done, not just to the Quran today, but the earlier Quranic manuscripts.
Now, back in 2014 when we introduced this, and even a year ago when you and I actually started unpacking this, the recurrent rebuttal to this is nothing more than qira'at. This is nothing more than ahruf. We're going to go into that today, so I don't want to really talk too much about it at the beginning. But we're going to dispel that. We're going to show this has nothing to do with qira'at. This has nothing to do with ahruf. Explain what we're even talking about there.
That's right.
Define the term. What does qira'at
when we're talking about qira'at, this is a term that was used or actually introduced later on in the process of transmitting the Quran. And here is what happened. For instance, let's use the example of the second recension of the Quran by Uthman. The reason why it was done is the claim that people read in the Quran in different dialects, qira'at, okay? So the people of Kufa were reading it one way, the people of Basra were reading it another way, the people of Damascus were reading it this way, the people of Mecca and Medina were reading it in a different way, which is normal today, by the way. I mean, you can speak Arabic in different dialects, but there is classical Arabic. So we're talking about the dialectical form of the Arabic. So apparently, at that time, it caused a problem, because when you take a word and you read it in your own dialect, it could be read differently, pronounced differently, or even meant a whole different story. So that's what we're talking about.
This is what most Muslims think we're talking about here. We're going to destroy that today.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with dialectical differences. But I don't want to get into it, as I said earlier. Let's now go back and let's see why is it that this material that we're going to introduce, primarily this book that we're going to introduce, this is the book that's coming out, will be out by the time
let's show it to the audience right now. If
I'll put it right up here so you can read it. If you read the title, it's 20 examples of correction in early Quran manuscripts.
Right. If you can lift it up again so that
let me just put it up there so you can see it.
There you go.
And you can then, there it is. This is the book that's coming out. Now, this is nothing more than a PowerPoint example. This is not the actual book.
That's right.
It will
it's still
be
published.
In the works. We have been given a pre-published copy. You have got it. I have got it.
That's
Dan
right.
Brubaker is working with us on it. We're actually helping him before he gets it out. What we want to do is we want to unpack this book. We want to show what we have been trying to say for the last 5 years and what Muslims have not got. To do that, we need to do a little background.
Absolutely. And just to let people know that if you watched our previous series about the Quran's many problems, you've probably been exposed to some of this background, but it's important for us to repeat it again and build a foundation for this particular series.
So let's go back. What did we say last year? Well, what we said is that there are 4 claims that every Muslim makes about this book, the Quran. This is the Quran right here. This is what everybody is looking at. And when I say Quran, I'm talking about the Arabic, this part,
That's right.
not the English translation. Please, when you Muslims are hearing us, we're not talking about any translation. We're not talking about any other language. We're talking about the Arabic Quran. In this book, which is from Hilali and Khan, which is the most popular edition in the English language, the English translation, they don't believe it can be translated. It's nothing more than an interpretation of the noble meaning.
Or the interpretation.
But it is the Arabic text that we're going to get at. This is known as the Hafs text, H-A-F-S, Hafs. We're going to unpack that and show why that's significant.
The Hafs reading, basically.
The Hafs reading, which was canonized in 1924, 95 years ago. Now, we're going to show this book here. And what we said, this book for Muslims. Now, not every Muslim listening today will agree with everything that Al and I are going to say. Nonetheless, I don't think any Muslim will disagree with these 4 points. And I introduced these 4 points back in 2014. Number 1, the first point is that this book is eternal. It has never been created. Am I correct?
That's what the Muslims believe.
Every Muslim believes that, and they have to. Why?
There was an argument even at the early era of Islam, because there was a group in Mu'tazila that they believed that actually the Quran was created. They were struggling with that, and there was a problem.
And why is the problem? What's the problem? What is it that the Mu'tazilites came up with? The difficulty was, if it is uncreated, that means there is a duality.
That's right.
How can you have a book that is co-eternal with God himself, if Allah is one?
If you believe in absolute oneness.
Talk about Trinity. There's a duality right there, and I'm glad I don't have to defend that. You can see why
actually,
the Mu'tazilites...
I will make a case that it's triune, because you incarnated into a book now in writing.
And there's also Ruh Allah, which is in chapter 59. You can see that the Ruh Allah also then destroys that. I'm sorry, chapter 50, verse 16. That is as close to as your jugular vein, which means the Spirit of God is even on earth.
That's right.
There's a triunity that we don't even want to talk about. I would not want to defend that. Nonetheless, that's the first point, that it is uncreated, that it is co-eternal with God. That every Muslim has to say that because of chapter 85, verse 22, or Surah 85, ayah 22. The preserved tablets, referring to these preserved tablets that exist in heaven. Number 1, okay? Number 2, every Muslim would have to agree, whether they are radical, whether they are nominal, whether they are liberal, whether they are on any one of these 3 categories, they will all, well, maybe not the liberals. The liberals are now moving away from this belief that this book was sent down to a man named Muhammad between 610 and 632 AD. That 23 year period, depending if you're doing the lunar calendar or our current calendar. So that 22 years, it was sent down. The Meccan material was sent down between 610 and 622, and then from 622 to 632, you have the Medinan.
Correct.
Okay, that's number 2. Number 3 is that this book did not get compiled during the time of Muhammad because it was not written down on any codex, any codified form. It was first written down during the time of Abu Bakr in around 632, 634. Then it had to be rewritten a second time at the time of Uthman. Right. Let's just put it to 650, 652. Correct. So roughly 20 years after Muhammad's death, it then finally gets written down in its codex, in its canonical form. Muslims believe this is it.
And that's what they call the Uthmanic Rasm, basically.
They call it the Uthmanic Rasm. That's the Arabic right here. And then number 4, that this text that I'm pointing to right here is exactly the same that was canonized in 652, exactly the same that was revealed to Muhammad between 610 and 632, and is exactly the same that exists in those preserved tablets.
Preserved tablets, exactly.
Now, can you see, when we introduced this a year ago, we asked the same 4 questions that I asked in 2014. We cannot really sit there and try to dispute the first 2 categories. Eternality, how can you dispute that? Whether it was Muhammad received it, we're not there in the 7th century. There's no way that we can.
That's right.
We're going to waste our time even trying to talk. But the last 2 we can. The last 2 categories, that it was complete at the time of Uthman, and that it has never changed. That the book that we have in our hand today is exactly the same. Not just the same as far as that it looks the same. That it's exactly the same. Every word is the same. Every letter is the same. Even Muslims will say even the diacritical dots are the same.
And I assure you, Jay, that many of these Muslims either don't speak Arabic or haven't even seen a manuscript of the Quran.
Well, that's why I have you here, and that's why I'm so glad to be on your show, and that's why I'm so glad we're going to get together, because we're going to destroy those last 2. Because all we're going to ask, basically what we're saying, and here, listen, Muslims, hear me out. We're asking 2 simple things, well, actually 3 simple things. Show us one Quran, one of this manuscript from this book, that you can date to the 7th century, to around 652, the time of Uthman, that is complete. That means it has 114 books, 114 chapters, 114 surahs,
right,
and is unchanged. All right, let me repeat that. We just want one manuscript that is from the time of Uthman, that is complete and unchanged.
And it matches this one identically. That's what we mean. Don't come to me and say, oh, we have one that is 98% complete. Well, does it match this one? That's the question.
Now, the comeback is, we have the Topkapi, which is in Istanbul. That's complete and unchanged. We have the Samarkand, which is in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. That is complete and unchanged.
But the Topkapi is not complete. It's still 90.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. We're going to show that not any of these Qurans, whether they go to the Husseini manuscript, which is in Cairo, whether they go to the Petropolitan manuscript, which is in Paris, whether they go to the Matl manuscript, the 2165 manuscript that is in the British Museum, British Library, or whether they go to the most important, which is the one you are doing your doctoral thesis, the Sana'a manuscript.
Exactly. And I just let me repeat this. Even if you come back and tell me it's 99.9% complete, it's still not complete. That's the point I want to make.
We're not satisfied with 99.9,
right,
because that's not the claim they're making. They're claiming every bit of the Quran is there, all 114 surahs. And they're claiming that every word, every letter.
And that's the thing, Jay. I mean, you can tell me it's complete. Complete in what? In volume, in number of chapters, or complete also in every word, every letter, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Now, why do they have to make these, especially the last 2 claims? Why do they have to put it on such a high pedestal? What's going on here, Al-Fadi?
Textual criticism.
Okay, what is textual criticism? Define what you just said.
Well, it's basically you take any manuscript and you try to trace the readings, and try to age it and to try to find a family of manuscripts that matches that, and you can even find changes in it. You can find variant text readings, and so on and so forth. The Bible has been open for this criticism for many
what
years.
You have just said in the last 20 seconds is gobbledygook to 99% of Muslims that talk to me. They have no understanding of what you have just created. And the reason why is this has never been done to the Quran.
Absolutely not.
What has been done to the Bible, we have done this for the Bible for the last 150 years. Wellhausen, remember Wellhausen back in the 1800s, 1900s, he was actually saying these very things. Textual criticism comes out of Germany. It comes out of schools like Tübingen in Germany, where they ask the same questions of the Bible. 150 years ago, they were saying, can you say that this book, the 5 books of Moses, were they really written in 1400 BC? Are they 3,400 years old? Where is the original? There were no originals.
Right.
That was a very good question. Even though it scared an awful lot of Christians then, it still scares an awful lot of Christians today. It doesn't scare you and me. Why not?
Because we have thousands of these manuscripts and we can trace things back with accuracy.
But we never make this claim. There's not one Christian that would say that we have the originals. I have never, in all my seminary years, I've never heard any professor say that we have the original Moses, books of Moses, or even any of the Old Testament. Remember, the Old Testament, Malachi is the last book. It was written 400 years before Jesus even appeared on earth. Nobody would claim that we have the originals.
Because if you do that, you shoot yourself in the foot
Absolutely.
immediately.
Do we even have the originals of the New Testament?
No, but
we don't have any originals.
Similar things. We have complete, actually.
So we would
manuscripts.
never make the claim that the Muslims are making. Let's make that. Are you listening, Muslims?
That's right.
We would never make the claim about our Bible, what you're making about your Quran.
But
therefore, we have to be careful that we are not asking the same questions. See, even though these questions came out in the 1800s and 1900s, and by 1905, it just filtered down into the seminaries, it filtered down into the churches, it basically destroyed the church in Europe.
Absolutely. And, we're almost like approaching the end of our introduction, basically, episode. But what I want to say, here's the beauty about this, is that I can simply tell the Muslims that the Quran, that supposedly appeared 600 years after the New Testament, had no problem quoting from there, and never once says that the book is corrupt as our Muslim friends would want us to believe.
Yeah. And we could do a whole episode just on chapter
Absolutely.
10, verse 94, chapter 21, verse 7, chapter 4, 136, all the way. Let's end with this thing.
Yeah.
The Bible is not making the claims the Quran is. The Quran is claiming eternality. The Quran is claiming sent down to a man named Muhammad. The Quran is, and the Muslims are claiming that it was completed by the time of Uthman in 652, and the Muslims are claiming that it's not changed. Now, we're going to take those two apart as we go and unpack this book.
So that's what's coming.
That's what's coming.
We are going to unpack these 2 points, and we're going to go through this book by Dr. Daniel Brubaker to be able to make the case.
And we're just going to talk about 20 of them. There are 4,000 we could go to.
One is more than enough, right? Because
even one will destroy.
Right. Because you told me it's
claims.
complete and it's perfect and it's preserved and it's uncreated and it matches what's in heaven. So we just proved to you that that's not the case.
Listen, this is going to be fun. It's going to be great because not only do we have an Arabist on board who can actually read the text and see where the changes are. We're going to show you why this destroys the Quran, because all we need to do is confront those last two claims to show that there has an enormous amount of changes. And if there are changes, that means there's human intervention.
Amen.
There's human intervention.
Well, with that, basically, I'm hoping that we have whet your appetite for what is expected to come. As always, we're blessed to have Dr. J. Smith with us. And we are also blessed to have scholars like Dr. Daniel Brubaker, who are literally sticking their neck out there by making a research like this. Even though he's an academician, he really has no intent to attack or anything like that. He's just doing a research, a scholarly research like many others. And our job here is to present and showcase some of these findings really for the benefit of our Muslim friends. And I'm hoping that if you're not a Muslim and you are engaged in a Muslim ministry, that you would use some of this material in your witness to them and evangelism. And until we meet next time, have a blessed day. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, hit the bell so that you don't miss future videos. And please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Sira International. And together we can introduce Muslims to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thank you.